The Sea of Quanta, as it is known in Honkai Impact 3rd, is a mess of data, memories, and a place where time loses meaning. It is a terrifying chaos of unknowns, commonly called the Void, the Dreamscape, Primordial Sea, and the Sea of Quanta. This sea is a constant in the HooH-verse, but there is another constant, and that is the imaginary tree. The imaginary tree is all real space that is separated from the Sea of Quanta. So how did the imaginary tree come to be? Well, let's ask a Honkai Star Rail character what they think. Lygus, or Lycurgus, calls it the prime mover of life, and also infers that it is the destruction. Destruction is simply the representation of entropy, or the tendency of energy to spread itself out evenly. In physics, it is commonly thought that entropy also is what caused the universe in real life to spring forth, and also the physical manifestation of time and the cause of life. So, if entropy is the prime mover of life, in other words, that means entropy sprang forth from the Sea of Quanta to create time, order, and life. Those are the roots of the universe. In Honkai Star Rail, this functionally means that when time started moving, another order arose. They carefully safeguarded life until it could grow into proper leaves of the tree. This is commonly believed to be the job of HooH as well. This means there is a possibility that HooH is a creation of another order. Long, a Leviathan that probably existed prior to the Order of Time, also likely rose to Eonhood around this time after observing life practicing what they thought to be expressions of permanence. Ouroboros also likely appeared during this time, swallowing leaves that were either unprotected or overwhelming Enna and Klepoth's defenses against other Leviathans from the Sea of Quanta. Those familiar with Honkai Star Rail Eons may ask, where is HooH? And to that I say, you already met them, and didn't realize it. Yes, the imaginary tree and the Sea of Quanta are the physical manifestations of HooH. They separate concepts, splitting all beings into an interchangeable duality, thus fusing all positives and all negatives in the universe into an equilibrial whole. Devlog 1 for HooH in the simulated universe. If you are not convinced, the database says something similar. HooH dissolved their will into the web of logic behind the universe's movements, maintaining the balance and stability of all things in perpetuity. HooH databank entry. This makes them sound like the physical manifestation of the universe itself. Whether observed or not is irrelevant. The quote in reference to the Aeon in the databanks also suggests this. The idea that no one can alter the fundamental web of logic behind the universe either. After surviving the Dusk Wars, Noose, Akivili, and Aha probably all ascended. Noose prior to Akivili, since its creator Xandar I Quabra only theorized interstellar travel before creating Noose. The databank entry on Xandar reads as follows. In the imaginary tree theory put forward by Xandar I Quabara, the universe is filled with the mysterious imaginary energy. Imaginary energy isolates star clusters from each other, and even light cannot pass through it. Therefore, human space exploration is often limited by the boundaries of their individual worlds, unable to advance any further. Xandar also posed a hypothesis that humans would be able to control the universe if we could control and manipulate imaginary energy. It was a romantic illusion for a long time until it was brought into reality by the appearance of emanators and eons. Achivili probably rose next, the myth saying that they managed to escape the imaginary energy surrounding their star cluster, and in doing so, ascended. Because neither the IPC nor the Xianzhou would be able to move around in space without the Astral Express and the star rails it laid, we know this to be the case because in Fables About the Stars, written by Fu Xuan, the star rail itself can connect distant galaxies by means of a mysterious mechanism. The safe routes we, the IPC and the Xianzhou, all rely upon today all follow remnants of these star tracks. Without the star rail, as mentioned by the databank entry, the only means of travel would be to become an emanator of an eon. That sounds like a tall task to me. This all points to the idea that only eons and emanators can manipulate imaginary energy directly. Another point for Xandar's theory. However, another eon ascended during this time, and that is Aha. In their myth told in the databank entry, accounts that Aha climbed to the top of the imaginary tree and saw nothing but the void. And when looking back down, they saw a baby fall to the ground, likely on a leaf far off in the distance, suggesting that Aha had already gained Aeonic-like sight. To this event, their only response was laughter. I would like to point out that because they managed to climb the tree, this means their ascension was likely after Achivili, since if Aha climbed the tree directly, then that means they're already on the path Achivili blazed. The next eons should be Adrilla, Teizeranth, Uli, and Mythos. Contrary to popular belief, Mythos does not actually oppose Nous. Not directly, at least. That honor would go to Aha. In Mission Antinomic Waltz in Simulated Universe Expansion Unknowable Domain, Aha declares, "The universe is like a madman's jest, irrational and beyond comprehension. The knowable domain will henceforth be known as the unknowable domain." Not to mention the backdrop of the unknowable domain is surrounded by the question of whether or not the universe is predetermined or not. After the events of the Swarm disaster, where Klepoth, under Enno's orders, diluted the path of propagation.
Apparently, when you're an Eon, you can just do things.
In the wake of this, Yaosha, Ix, and Elan appear. I am aware of the theory that Yaosha existed prior to Teizeranth. Yes, I have watched Emma's video. I disagree. The theory is hinged on the assumption that because long the permanents observed what they considered to be the expressions of the permanents to be actual paths with eons that already existed, or exist only after the permanents rose. Of these, propagation is included. Propagation is said to have split the path of permanents. And in the records of the Vidyadhara, Scions of Permanence, they say that at some point they lost their ability to transmute and change the essence of life. Around them, that is. I believe that this is the splitting of the propagation from the permanence, which probably also removed the ability of the Vidyadhara to reproduce. This was also prior to the Vidyadhara joining the Xianzhou. So time is not really an issue here. This theory is dubious at best, in my opinion, but the general idea of there being imaginary and quantum eons, I love. We'll get into that in a different video, as it was something I was cooking up long before I watched EmaMae's video. The final eon we know to have risen is Nanook the Destruction, the embodiment of entropy. Simulated Universe mentions that Nanook's home planet, Adlabun, was ravaged by the remnants of the Swarm disaster. We also know Achivili's last stop before disappearing is Adlabun. It was said that Nanook scorched and destroyed their home planet. In the simulated universe, we see a man who looks a lot like Phynon beholding a floating Astral Express badge. This does not bode well for Achivili. let's move on from eons. Let's talk about the physical manifestations of the imaginary tree and the Sea of Quanta and what it means. Think of the arrows as the passage of time. The circle is the present. The lines of that circle are leaves. Those leaves that grow from the branches of this tree are worlds, star clusters, real space that living things inhabit. Therefore, the branches are time, and the trunk and upwards is the flow of time. It may be tempting, therefore, to believe that one can travel to different timelines through the branches by manipulating imaginary energy. However, this is in fact impossible. It is impossible to time travel because by traversing throughout the tree, you are in fact still a part of the tree's movement through time. If you could travel back in time, that would break causality, and as far as we know, HooH has never broken causality outside of spaces under the effects of the Sea of Quanta, where order and time are merely a suggestion and not law. Going back to the previous illustration, imagine the outside of the circle as the Sea of Quanta. When a leaf falls off the imaginary tree, and it falls into the Sea of Quanta, becoming a bubble world disconnected from causality, and therefore can parade its own laws according to the strongest will. This video was very much a foundation, starting point for my foray into HSR theorizing, so I did not make any bold claims in this video. The next video will be completely different. I will make bold claims, and I will step on some toes. Thanks for watching, bye for now. In physics, it is commonly thought that entropy is also the what caused life in In physics, it is commonly thought that entropy is also Machiavelli probably rose next. The myth saying that they has managed to escape the imaginary star. We'll get into that in a different video, as it has the final Aeon we know to have risen is Nanook the Destruction, the embodiment of entropy. Redo that. In the simulated universe, we see a man who looks a lot like Phynon holding or